The Last Samurai, November 6, 1877. For centuries, Japan was shaped by men who lived and died by a single principle: honor above everything. They trained for war from childhood. They served powerful lords. They practiced discipline, loyalty, self-control, swordsmanship, archery, strategy, and meditation. Their presence shaped Japan's culture, politics, and identity. They were the samurai, a warrior class that stood at the heart of Japanese society for over 700 years. But on November 6, 1877, everything ended. A final battle took place in Kagoshima. A few last warriors, wounded and exhausted, charged forward one last time. Not to win, but to die with dignity. That day marked the fall of the last samurai. And at the center of it all was one man, Saigō Takamori, the real-life last samurai. Today we are going to explore his story, the world he came from, the Japan that was changing around him, the rebellion that became the final stand, and why so many people still see him as a symbol of honor in a modern age. Let's begin. To understand why the final samurai fought, we need to understand what came before. For centuries, Japan was ruled not by emperors and palaces, but by military governments known as shogunates. Samurai served as the elite class. They followed Bushido, the way of the warrior, a moral code built on loyalty to one's lord, courage and discipline, humility and self-restraint, duty to protect, acceptance of death. A true samurai did not fear death. In fact, accepting death was seen as freedom. Honor was more important than life. A samurai's weapons were more than tools of war. They were symbols of identity and soul. The katana, the longsword, became a spiritual symbol, passed down with pride. They practiced Zen Buddhism, training to calm the mind and sharpen focus. Their lives mixed philosophy, military skill, and tradition. But by the mid-1800s, the world was changing. Warships from the West arrived. Modern weapons entered Asia. Nations began industrializing. Japan faced a choice: stay isolated and risk colonization, or modernize and survive. The ancient samurai world was about to collide with modern reality. In 1853, U.S. Commodore Matthew Perry arrived in Japan with modern warships and demanded trade relations. Japan's isolation collapsed. Foreign technology, modern weapons, railways, factories, industry, they flooded in. Many young leaders believed Japan needed to transform fast to avoid being conquered. This period became known as the Meiji Restoration, when the emperor regained power and modernization accelerated. Samurai lost their income stipends, their political position, their right to carry swords in public. Sword Abolishment Edict, 1876. Traditional robes were replaced by military uniforms. Samurai academies closed. Western education, law, and science began shaping society. Japan was modernizing, fast, but the heart of old Japan was fading. Some saw this as the evolution of a nation. Others saw it as the death of the soul of Japan. And at the center of this conflict stood one man. Saigō Takamori was born in Kagoshima in 1828. A humble background, but he rose through the ranks through loyalty, courage, and sincerity. He became known not just as a warrior, but as a man of integrity, someone who spoke simply, lived modestly, and valued principle above politics. He supported the Meiji Restoration at first. He wanted Japan to be strong, but not at the cost of its identity. He trained soldiers, helped lead modernization, and became one of Japan's most respected figures. For a time, he stood alongside future leaders, shaping a new nation. But soon he realized something troubling. Modernization was erasing tradition, not protecting it. He believed a nation must move forward, but must not forget who it is. When the government began humiliating samurai culture, banning swords, reducing their status, Saigō could not accept it. He left the government, returned to Kagoshima, and founded military academies to preserve samurai spirit. Thousands followed him. By 1877, frustration reached its peak. Many samurai felt betrayed, replaced by a Western-style army and bureaucracy. Rumors spread that Saigō might lead a rebellion, even though he never officially declared one at first. When conflict finally erupted, Saigō accepted his fate. He would not abandon the warriors who looked to him for guidance. Tens of thousands of samurai marched under his banner. Their weapons? Katanas, old rifles, and faith. The imperial army, however, had modern rifles, artillery, ammunition factories, rail transport. It was tradition versus technology, honor versus industry. The rebellion saw fierce battles, especially at Kumamoto Castle, where samurai charged against gunfire. They fought bravely, they fought desperately, they fought knowing the outcome. Little by little, they were pushed back. By November 6, 1877, it was over. Saigō Takamori and his last remaining warriors retreated to Shiroyama Hill in Kagoshima. They were exhausted, starving, and wounded. Their numbers had fallen from nearly 40,000 to only a few dozen. Surrounded on all sides, with no escape, Saigō made his final choice. He was mortally wounded in battle. Some sources say he performed seppuku, ritual suicide to preserve honor, while others say a loyal follower ended his suffering. After his death, the remaining samurai launched one final charge. They knew they could not win. They charged anyway, but for loyalty, for honor, for identity. All were killed. With their fall, the samurai era truly ended. Japan continued modernizing rapidly. Railways expanded, factories multiplied, Western education spread, a modern military rose. Within decades, Japan became one of the most powerful nations in the world. But many Japanese later looked back at Saigō and wondered, did modernization demand too high a price? Saigō Takamori was eventually pardoned by the government. Statues were built in his honor, including in Tokyo's Ueno Park. He became a symbol of loyalty, courage, and moral conviction. Some people say he represents Japan's soul, the idea that you can move forward without forgetting who you are. The samurai disappeared, but Bushido survived. You can still see it today in martial arts philosophy, Japanese work ethic, cultural discipline, respect for duty and perseverance, tea ceremony, and Zen traditions. Even in modern life, echoes of samurai values remain. Movies like The Last Samurai romanticize this history, inspired by Saigō, though fictionalized. But the real story is deeper, more complex, and human. A nation standing between tradition and change. A leader torn between loyalty to the past and responsibility to the future. A final stand where ancient honor faced modern power. And that was the day, November 6th, 1877, when the last samurai made their final stand and an ancient era came to an end. Now here's the question. Do you think Japan lost something irreplaceable when the samurai disappeared? Or was modernization necessary, even if it meant sacrificing tradition? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more real stories that shaped history. See you in the next one, and until then, remember, honor lives as long as we choose to carry it.